And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. And I will tell you all about how you can hear us and where and when and the who's, the what's, the how's, the where's, the why's later, because we're going to get right into our program with our very special guest. Her name is Janis Harper, and I will just say right now, Janis, thank you, sir, for joining us all the way from Canada. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Richard. It's an honor to be here virtually in every way.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I have you here on the program today is of course, in regards to a book that you have written, as well as many other things that you were involved in, is because of the concept. The book entitled Jonas and the Mountain. It is a metaphysical love story. Now, I consider myself to be a metaphysician, and I know that it is possible to interpolate, to extrapolate, to interpret or view things from many, many different perspectives. And I know, too, that one of the things that is so interesting, of course, when you start talking about, for example, the ancient wisdom teachings, depending upon which philosophy you're coming from, you're not 100% certain exactly how to interpret them. I was listening, for example, to a description of the Quran. Not anything specific, but in general, how you can't just pick it up and read it and take it at face value, because allegory and metaphor, literal and spiritual and or metaphysical, are interwoven throughout. And so you would probably have to have, I don't know if they have the same equivalency as a Bible of commentaries, and everybody's got commentaries on the Bible. I don't know if they make those for the Quran or the other ancient wisdom teachings. But you have a book that you wrote from that perspective. First of all, tell us how and or why you wrote a metaphysical love story. What is the impetus behind that concept for you?
Yeah. Can I hold my book up?
Absolutely. And of course, people will be able to see it because we will have it showing throughout the interview as well.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, so this is a novel, Richard. It's first and foremost a novel. And it's called The Metaphysical Love Story because it is a love story, a love of various kinds. And the metaphysical part has to do with the kinds of teachings. There's different strands interwoven in this novel. It's not just a straight, juicy plot and character kind of novel. It's a novel where the protagonist, Jonas, meets a non-dualist guru in India. So there is that is what you would call an ancient wisdom teaching, because it's Advaita Vedanta from Hinduism. And then at the same time, or a little later, after being on retreat with this non-dualist guru for a few weeks, the protagonist meets someone else, and this is someone who has a whole different kind of wisdom, and it can be described as metaphysical. So she acquired these teachings spontaneously when she was young, and she just has a source of knowledge. And these kinds of teachings fall into the metaphysical camp because they can be seen as aligned with other metaphysical teachings like Seth, channeled by Jane Roberts, and perhaps Bashar and Abraham. Someone who recently wrote a review on Amazon of my novel said, if you like Seth and Abraham, read this book. So that's where that comes from. There's several kinds of teachings and strands, and I kind of put it all together under metaphysical because there is that spiritual component with the Advaita Vedanta, the non-dualist Eastern philosophy, which comes from Hinduism and it's related to Buddhism. And then there's the whole metaphysical aspect as well that comes from this other source. And if I can go on a little bit
Yes,
more,
please.
regarding it's an interview, I guess I should. Regarding the impetus for the book, it's a personal one for me, because ever since I was a teenager, I was how to describe this? I was drawn to I was spiritual. I was born that way. And so as a teenager, I did things. When I was 14, I was chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I was a Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist, and I devoted a couple of hours every day to chanting in front of my shrine, my Butsudan. And then from there, I started exploring other Eastern philosophies. And then suddenly, when I was 17, I encountered the Seth material, one of the various books. And that I felt I knew everything very intimately that Seth was describing and teaching through Jane Roberts. So from then, I had this sort of this dual this concern: where do these two meet? The metaphysical world, and there's so much there. I mean, this is where angelic guides come in, and between lives, and channeling, and the multitude of other ideologies and teachings that can be seen under that rubric. Yeah. And then there is the Eastern philosophy and traditions where people, when they're going for enlightenment, and that's the be all and end all. So the impetus for writing this book was, can these two meet? The sitting. So in terms of the guru that Jonas meets, and the book is quite autobiographical. All of this is personal to me. I did spend a lot of time in India with the guru. And there you sit in silence and meditation and empty the mind. And that is how you open into the oneness. And how does that, and you create your reality and all that other stuff. Where do they meet? Can they meet? So I gave Jonas the job of figuring it all out.
Well, what is interesting is, as you describe it, a love story, a metaphysical love story, and that, we could really use those kinds of stories right now, especially considering the fact that, we're going through what some would consider to be rather tumultuous times right now in terms of trying to figure out, what it is that we're here to do, and I know that one of the great things in all of this is the fact that, and this phrase has been, maybe it's been overused, maybe not, but the phrase is, when it comes to the various topics that come to the table, at least we're having a conversation about it now. Whatever the subject matter is, you can talk about the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, and the list goes on and on. I don't even talk, and I will tell you, there's one subject I don't talk about it from this context, and that's climate change. I do not talk about it from the context of climate change. I talk about it from the context, don't you think we should just clean up our home? I mean, come on. I mean, tell me, at least once a week, you have to go through your apartment, your flat, wherever it is that you live, and you clean. You dust, and maybe you sweep and or mop, and you vacuum the rugs, and you do the dishes, and you take care of the laundry, and you might change the bedding and all. Well, why? Why are you doing this? Well, because I like to have a clean home. Well, then why can't you feel the same way about the planet on which we live and do your part? So when I get in conversations with people, I say, no, don't even talk to me about that. I don't care whether you believe or disbelieve in the science, and I don't care about the science. Irrelevant. We need to clean up our home. It's that simple. It's that simple. Change the message to clean up our home.
Yeah, so Yeah, you've personalized what can be abstract or seen as external or out there when you say that. Yeah,
And
that's
yeah, go ahead.
no, go on. I was going to say that's part of what I do in my book as well. Is I take these philosophies and these ideas, and I make them personal, and they come alive in the characters' lives. Yeah, it brings it home rather than discussing it as an idea.
Yeah.
That's externalized.
And you don't have to get all bent out of shape over the subject matter. Just just relax. It's gonna be okay. But we need to start taking a look at these kinds of things and realizing that if we don't start getting focused on what's really important, then, hey, it's not going to work. We're not going to be here for very long. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. You are listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. We are talking with author as well as singer-songwriter Janis Harper. I am correct in that, am I not? You are a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
And we're going to feature one of your songs here in just a moment as we continue talking with you here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. This is a program that is here for you. It's here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. We're here on Mondays at 1 a.m. and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. We stream live at those times at richarddugan.com, and the podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, and many other locations that you can find us on the internet. We have a YouTube channel where you can watch these interviews, listen to them too, at YouTube. And the Tell Me Your Story, Richard Dugan is the website, or the channel, if you will. So we hope that you will do just that you will participate by being a part of the listening crew or the viewing crew. I will tell you, as of this broadcast, and I'm really kind of excited about this. It's slow going on the YouTube channel as far as subscribers, but you know what? There are a lot more people listening than there are subscribing, and that's okay. That's just fine. I'm not looking to get high numbers in those areas. I know that the YouTube, they're looking at that. Okay, when you get 100,000 subscribers, you'll start making money. And it's like, well, I'm hoping to do that through different means before I ever reach 100,000 subscribers. I just hope 100,000 people are listening. We're at 53,000 listens and climbing through the SoundCloud analytics. We have distributed what they call the RSS feed. I used to know the acronym for that, how that's spelled out. But what it is, it's a code that you get from your podcasting site, and you distribute it to all the other podcasting sites, and then your podcasts are automatically transmitted. 53,000 plus. Hard to believe. And I will also tell you that in the last 12 months, we have exceeded half of that. In other words, in 12 months, we've had over 26,000 listens, whereas in the last 3 years prior to that, we had 26,000 listens. So a big, big growth spurt for us here on Tell Me Your Story. We're talking with Janis Harper. We're talking about Jonas and the Mountain, but I want to talk a little bit after we listen to a piece of music here by you, Janis Harper. I want to talk a little bit about your music, and we're going to do that in just a moment as we listen to Better This Way, and that is one of your songs. And
absolutely, it's the title cut of my recent album. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! And so, folks, this is Better This Way, Janis Harper. Stay tuned.
By the way, it's been 2 years now since you broke us all apart. By the way, I'm doing okay now, even though you broke my heart. I've been to India, and I've been to Oregon, and I never thought I'd say I might even like it better this way. Getting used to being alone now, it's not much different from before. 20 years is such a long time to finally close the door. So I went to India, and I went to Oregon, and I never thought I'd say that I might even like it better this way. Never thought I'd ever feel whole again, still not sure if I'm even there, but I'm trying to let myself grow again, just trying to breathe the air. I've been to India, and I've been to Oregon, and I never thought I'd say that I might even like it better this way. I still don't know why you hurt me so, it's a mystery to me, but I've given up trying to understand so that I can find some peace. Maybe someday when the wounds have healed and you can finally say you understand what I feel, and it's a different world and I know what's real, we can look at each other and say maybe it's better this way. Broke us all apart. By the way, I'm doing okay now, even though you broke my heart. I've been to India, and I've been to Oregon, and I never thought I'd say I might even like it better this way. Never thought I'd ever feel whole again, still not sure if I'm even there, trying to let myself grow again, just trying to breathe the air. In 2 years, I've been to hell and back, drunk myself unconscious, put a pack on my back, and I've been to India, I've been to Oregon, and I never thought I'd say maybe it's better this way. I still don't know why you hurt me so, it's a mystery to me, but I've given up trying to understand so that I can find some peace. Maybe someday when the wounds have healed and you can finally say you understand what I feel, and it's a different world and I know what's real, we can look at each other and say maybe it's better this way. I guess it might even be better this way. Maybe we can say that it's better this way.
Janis Harper here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank Janis for joining us here on this special program. Beautiful, beautiful music. We're going to hear another song from you shortly. But you and I now, and I a year ago, I couldn't say this, but you and I are songwriters. Now,
Yeah.
I've only written one song, but still, that makes me a songwriter. It's on my YouTube
Sure it
channel.
does.
That sounds to me like a really personal song. Can you give us the background, the backstory, if you will, of Better This Way?
Yeah, well, it's really simply a divorce song. Really, I mean, that's what else can I say? I wrote it when I was in India, actually, and I debuted it at a open mic in India. Yeah, it's a song about a divorce, but it can be any kind of split up. Doesn't have to be a divorce. Yeah, well, I don't know. What else can I say about that? It's not a bitter song. It is it?
It sounds like you recognize if I can put it this way, the damage done. But you also recognize that through the line, it's better this way, that this was just part of the path. And I can relate to that because of my first divorce and the challenges that I went through then, and that I wouldn't go back and change anything. Only because if I could, you and I wouldn't be here talking today. I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also, there's in the chorus, it's also about letting go of all the craft and all of the stories and who did what in order to find some peace. Maybe someday when the wounds have healed, can finally say, you understand what I feel, and it's a different world, and we know what's real. That isn't the part that I wanted to quote. We can look at each other and say, there's a line about finding peace.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that's important in that we need to, somewhere along the way, we need to find that peace, no matter how challenging, or even to use the word traumatic it was, past tense. This seems like, and again, we can't rush anybody. You will get there when you get there. That's kind of like what I told my brother. We were at a family reunion. We were out in the desert talking, and he says, I was sharing with him my philosophy and things that I'd learned and so forth. And I was 33 at the time. And he says, well, Richard, it's about time you got it. And I says, well, Mike, actually, it's not. It's actually when you get it. Okay. Yeah. And it's not about getting it at a particular time. It's just, you get it when you get it.
Yeah. And it's something, again, we spoke before of the personal as opposed to the objective external. It becomes something that is what you do. The other person can't do it. It really doesn't have anything to do with the other person.
Yeah.
It hasn't. Yeah, it doesn't have to do with anything that's been done to you. It's something that you do.
And that's a hard one. That's a hard one for people too. Also, because because we don't always want to take responsibility for what we've created. Someone was actually saying to me just today, prior to this interview, they said, well, Richard, it's your movie. You wrote the script, I mean, that's the way they put it. And so this is all yours, and they weren't being judgmental. They were being genuine, and they were saying, hey, that's just what it is. This is yours, your movie,
What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely could not agree more with that statement, because I can look back at certain instances in my life and I can see I can see exactly the moment that I made the choice, which is what this program is all about, that propelled me down this particular path and then down that path and then this way and then this way and so forth. And I think that's something too that people also, and I'm wondering how you share that teaching, if you will, with people when it comes to, I'll tell you what, a great line that I heard in a personal growth program that I went through. It was an outgrowth of Est back in the 80s, early 80s. It
Oh
was
yeah.
called
Yeah.
Life Spring. Life Spring.
Yep.
Are you
I
familiar?
remember that.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we were sitting around, and of course, the first night we're all kind of grumbling. It's 3 nights, like Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and they keep you there late into the next morning. Then all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And Wednesday night, grumbling around, I don't really want to be here. And the facilitator says, yeah, I hear the grumbling. I know that some of you feel like you just don't want to be here. You're uncomfortable. This is not what you thought it would be, blah, blah, blah. But let me enlighten you. If you didn't want to be here, you wouldn't be. By virtue of the fact that you are here says that you wanted to be here. And I love what someone elucidated on this program some time ago about choices. And of course, you hear the phrase, you are where you are because of all of the choices that you've made in the past. You will be where you will be because of all the choices you'll make between now and that time. And this person elucidated and it said, well, let's try one more. All of the choices that you will make today are based upon your perception of what you think your future will be. Can you talk to us about that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so going back to my book.
Yes.
And the book is really autobiographical. So when I talk about the characters, I'm in a way talking about myself. The character Arunachala, one of her first teachings is about how your life is like a story or like a book you're writing or a movie you're watching or a play that you're in. And interpreting it is a key toward understanding. If you can look at your life as a story, and look at, for example, the major themes, repeating symbols and metaphors. What do you see that keeps happening again and again? What's recurring in your life? What are the 3 major themes? If you can interpret it as you would a novel, say, like a literary analysis, then that's one way of getting another perspective on your life that you are writing. And that happens in this book too. At one point we find out kind of that Jonas is writing the novel. And what's going on in the novel then is it's just almost disrupting the reading of it to show that it's just a novel. So on that same level, that is what I'm talking about and what Arunachala talks about, is disrupting the immersion of you into the story of your life, and getting caught up in all of the drama and all of the thises and the that's and not being able to see out of it, and being so immersed in it. But if you begin to look at it as a story, and be able to see the patterns and the themes and the repeating symbols and the characters, then you can take a step out of it into a different kind of, a different reality, and perhaps one that's more of a capital R, real reality.
Someone said to me also, become the observer.
Yeah, so that's a common,
yeah,
that's a common thing, the witness and Buddhism, and yeah, but I'm not so much talking about witnessing, taking yourself out so that you can see, like watch your thoughts or watch events.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking more of the whole of your entire life. Like if you were to look at your life now and go, okay, what are the major themes here? And what do I see happening again and again? And what are the important symbols? And Anamika takes it further and says that everything in your life is symbolic. That you imbue the symbols with meaning, and then we're talking about perception again. But on another level, there's really nothing else out there. It's what you're needing to go through and learn.
Right.
It's coming. Whatever is there is coming up just for you.
Now, in your first song that we heard, Better This Way, you, of course, in the chorus line, talked about going to India and Oregon.
Yeah.
And I find the comparisons between the two places rather interesting, because obviously they're two places that you've been. What was it that drew you, and when were you drawn to India?
So ever since I was a kid, I've been drawn to India, and I was in love with India from the time I was a teenager on, and that's kind of why that is why I was drawn to Eastern philosophy and spirituality. It was a very big draw, and so I read Indian novels and everything about Indian culture. And but even though I did a lot of traveling when I was young adult, late teen, and went all sorts of places, I never made it to India. It's like there was always an obstacle there. I lived in Australia for a while, and it was always, okay, I'm going to get to India, and then it wouldn't happen. So this went on for a while, and then I never went to India, and I had a family and blah blah, career, blah blah. And it wasn't until that divorce that the Better This Way song describes that created an opening. Everything shattered. The life fell apart, and then through that breakdown, there was some light created. There was this opening, and I got through the divorce by planning a trip to India.
Wow!
And that's when I went there for the first time. Yeah, getting all the guidebooks, because at that time there were guidebooks rather than just online. And so that was a way of becoming myself again, really. And then India gave me a lot. In that trip, I ended up starting a school for an English school for orphans in South India, and then later on, I ended up publishing an anthology of women writers traveling in India, called Emails from India, Women Write Home. So India, and then I was there releasing the book at a festival, literary festival in India. So it gave me a lot, and it had a lot to do with the new life, the new person that I became on my own, outside of the structure of the marriage. Yeah. And Oregon. What do you say? Do you say Oregon or Oregon?
I just say Oregon. Oregon.
Oregon. I say
don't
Oregon.
Get fancy.
Yeah.
I don't get fancy in my pronunciation.
Yeah. I say Oregon too, but in the song it's Oregon, because
it has a better rhyme to the rest of the words. Yes.
Yeah. Right. So that really was another divorcee thing, because it's in the song, India and Oregon, and going to Oregon was, I had a friend there, and it was just a way that I could escape what was going on there, and it was another place to go. But it was really India that helped shape me, and that's something that I always knew and felt ever since I was really young. And then now look at this. Now I have a novel out that's set in India. And incidentally, if I can hold the cover up, the mountain on the novel is the holy mountain of Arunachala. It's an artistic rendering of it, and that's where Ramana Maharshi lived. And
the mountain is an actual place, but that's a rendering thereof.
Yeah, but it's very
cool.
Identifiable.
Yeah.
You know, it's got this shape.
You can't miss
people
it.
who, people think of it. Tiruvannamalai, where the mountain is, some people think of it as the center of the world, and people, it attracts seekers and sages from all over the world. And so whenever somebody sees the shape, they go, "Oh, wow, that's the holy mountain of Arunachala."
That's very cool.
Yeah,
we're going to listen. Go ahead.
I just wanted to summarize and say, so I think that answered your question regarding India and Oregon in the song, right?
Good comparison. We're going to listen to another one of your songs off of your album. This one is called Strawberry Wine. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that song before we hear it?
Oh, I wrote this actually decades ago. This album is like a retrospective of my career. So it's kind of a very 70s sounding, folk festy, dancey, happy, hippie, round a fire sort of song. So if you're, in, shall I say, our age group, or just I don't know how old you are, but if you, it's almost nostalgic. But then it's just a happy song, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And I wrote it when I was quite young. I'm not going to tell you how young.
Well, we're going to take a listen to it nonetheless, and this is Strawberry Wine. We are talking with Janis Harper. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. This is Strawberry Wine.
Over there, sun is shining. I can see the days unwinding peacefully. Perfect timing, oh so fine. And over me, tree is leaning. All around the leaves are reaching, and I know everything I see is mine. Yeah, it tastes like wine. It tastes like wine. It tastes like strawberry wine. Oh, it's so fine. Over there, there's a fire glowing. I can hear the people singing, and they're happy, oh so happy to be alive. And we're smiling at each other, all the sisters and the brothers, and we're happy, oh so happy, drinking wine. We taste like wine, yeah, we taste like wine. We taste like strawberry wine, oh it's so fine. When you watch me, smiling sunshine through the trees, breathing sweet wind upon my open face. And I'll lay by you in the firelight, I'll hold you when the sun is bright, and I'll know you when I find you, 'cause you'll say you taste like wine. Ah yeah, you taste like wine. You taste like strawberry wine, oh it's so fine. You taste like wine, ah, you taste like wine. You taste like strawberry wine, oh it's so fine. So fine, so fine, so fine. Right off the vine, strawberry wine. Wine, 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 wine. strawberry wine.
Janis Harper, my guest here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we are looking at not only the music that she has created over the years, the many years. We aren't going to ask how many. That would be rude of me to do. But she's also an author. Now, as far as being an author, is this, what number does Jonas, what number does Jonas and the Mountain come up on your collection of authored works?
Jonas and Janis do sound an awful lot alike.
Yes, they do.
Sure.
There's a connection there, but I can't quite make it.
Actually, it didn't even occur to me. I just really like the name Jonas. And afterwards, I was like, oh, yeah, gee, just a couple of letters different.
There are no accidents, Janis. There are no
there
accidents.
are no accidents. No, indeed. This is my third title, but it's my first novel. And it's the first work that is entirely mine. The other two were anthologies that I conceived and edited and contributed to. But I gathered submissions and selected, and yeah, the first title published in 2007 by Anvil Press. It's called Body Breakdown: Tales of Illness and Recovery. Yeah, and I had been through a major body breakdown, and really wished I had a book where I could read about other people's stories, mainly about being in hospital, part of the medical system, and feeling very vulnerable, and confronting mortality and all that kind of stuff. So I put this book in the world. Yeah. And then a few years later, there's my second title, another anthology called Emails from India, Women Write Home. And when I was in India, one of the times that I visited, I've been there 6 times now, I noticed that women in India seem to have a kind of special relationship. I don't know. So I wanted to pursue that. And so I created this anthology, again, put out a call for submissions and selected stories from women, Western women traveling in India. And it doesn't have to be on their own, or some are with, I have 6 stories in there about traveling with my son. I took him out of grade 11 and brought him to India for 3 months. So some of my stories are about traveling with my son. Yeah, so there is that book, and then there is this. And I'm a writer. I've published in other anthologies and literary journals and that kind of stuff. But this is my third title that has my name on the binding. And is a novel.
We encourage
philosophical novel.
Absolutely. We encourage people to go to your website, and the website just happens to be, surprise, surprise, janisharper.ca. And that's JANISHARPER, janisharper.ca for Canada, the land of the very pleasant, accommodating people, as they say. I don't know if that's true. Y'all could be, you could be the ugly Canadians as we are the ugly Americans to the French. But we encourage you to go to her website. We'll be linked to your website as well, so that people can find out more about you and the work and the music, the novel, as well as the 2 other works and other things that you're up to. And we're going to find out more about that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we encourage you to stay with us, because we've got a lot more coming, including another song by Janis that we'll feature here. And I have a feeling it has to do with a day that is only really associated with Canada, at least in this context, although we may have something along those lines here in this country. We'll find out about that. But I first want to ask you about your personal philosophy, what it was that you were raised with, and how that has expanded, or maybe it hasn't shifted out of that. I mean, myself, born and raised Roman Catholic. I consider myself today to be a metaphysician. So there you go. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing philosophically and where you are today.
No, I'm kind of curious about yours.
We'll do that on another show.
Okay. I grew up without any kind of organized religion imposed upon me, and I really appreciated that. So my mother, I guess, was sort of she called herself Protestant, I think, but we very rarely went to church, and it was just sort of a kind of a very lovingly generic Christianity, I guess you would say, but it wasn't anything that I had no duties to fulfill or any there was no organizational structure there, which was great. So I guess it freed me to be interested in all sorts of other stuff. And I think I mentioned I was 14 and practicing Nichiren and Shoshu Buddhist, and that really freaked my mother out, actually. She thought it was in the days of cults, and where cult leaders, people drank Kool-Aid, and so she was freaked out because suddenly here I was, people were bringing in this Butsudan, this shrine, into my bedroom, and she could hear me chanting for an hour or so a day, and that caused a rift actually in our relationship. But regarding to your question, it was really wonderful having that kind of open field in which to explore, because I always knew that I needed to do that, and began at a very young age. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is when an individual is usually given that kind of freedom, they do explore. I mean, that is part of why we send our children to school, is to broaden their horizons, to expand their awareness and their imagination, for that matter, and their creativity. I mean, and it's like, that absolutely, Richard, that applies when you're sending kids to school, but it does not apply when it comes to religion. I'm sorry, it does not apply. And that's the attitude that I have run into over the years, that there's only one way. And it made no sense to me because I go down this laundry list of things. Okay, there's all kinds of different foods and drink and experiences, educational, job opportunities, relationships that I could have with different people, da-da-da-da-da. But there's only one way to God. And it's like, that makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Now, is there only one God? I don't know. I have a good friend who quite often will quote this phrase: "Thank the gods," plural, and that's what she says. I have no doubt that she does believe that there are multiple gods, just like the Greeks and the Romans had multiple gods. But each one, and even in Hinduism, I can't even remember the number of godlike individuals, if you will, or entities or names, and each one has a different, shall we say, task. There's not one God that does it all.
But there kind of is in Hinduism, and there's three. There's a three, and then there's really one.
Yeah.
But then there's a pantheon as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. It really is. I'm curious as to what kind of philosophies you were exposed to when you were in India. Was it just Hinduism? Were you exposed to Muslims? Because obviously that was the big battle back in the late 40s, early 50s, was the battle between the Hindus and the Muslims and Gandhi and everything. And I do have to tell you that I remember seeing the movie, and I have to accept the fact that this was supposedly a true story, the movie of Gandhi, where he was laying on his cot, whatever, outside, and he wasn't eating because people were fighting, and he wouldn't start eating until they stopped. And these two men came up, and they were madder than heck at each other, and one was a Hindu, and one was a Muslim. And each of them had killed the other's son. And Gandhi came up with what was the most brilliant solution that I have ever heard. He told the Hindu father, "You find a let me see if I remember this correctly, a Muslim child, and you raise him as a Muslim. And to the Muslim father, he said, you find a Hindu child who is an orphan, and you raise him as a Hindu. I don't know that it almost looked as though they walked off in disgust like, oh, you're an idiot. You're crazy. There's no way I'm going to do that. And who knows, maybe they did. But until we walk a mile, as they say, in someone else's shoes, how are we going to know what's happening with them?
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, isn't it? Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the problem connected to that in India has gone away either.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah. Personally, it was more of a socio-cultural thing for me when I'd meet Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs, and it was just, it wasn't so much of being introduced to philosophy or religion. It was just more their lifestyles, slight differences in lifestyles, and and eating and culture, and which is just part of the beauty of India, because there's so much going on there.
Yeah. Was there a particular individual that you were going there to see, or were you just going there to see India and let the universe guide you?
The first time I went, just post divorce. Yeah, I just knew that I could finally fulfill my unrequited love for India by going there. And I really had no idea. Yeah. I had looked in guidebooks and kind of sketched out where I wanted to go, and I decided that South India, which was supposed to be more a better place for women to travel than North India. I don't know. Yeah, so I decided to stick to South India because there's so much. I left it very open. One of the things that I ended up doing was I had planned this, going to Sai Baba's ashram. Remember Sai Baba? He dressed in the orange robe and had the afro kind of hair. Yeah. And that was interesting because he died not that long after. So that was an experience I lived in a dorm, and I really didn't know all that much about him. And I never really felt a very strong connection to him. So I was kind of wrestling with that when I was there, and I was staying in a dorm with women who were all devotees, and assumed that I was as well. So that was an interesting experience. Yeah, and when I brought my son with me out of grade 11, a few years, the next year, we went to Sai Baba's ashram as well. Yeah, because at that point I had a little school called the Janis Harper English Medium School in the neighboring town.
Really?
Yeah. There's a story about that in my Emails from India book, and a story called Sai Baba Land. Yeah. Sai Baba
Land, I like that. Yeah. What rides did he have? No, I'm kidding. The levitation ride. I say that with a bit of facetiousness, but I have a great deal of respect. I keep getting drawn back to the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, who I started out with at the age of 17 with Autobiography of a Yogi.
And love that book.
Yeah, that is my metaphysical primer. And I keep getting drawn back to that tree, because I have come to that tree through different branches. One is the Self-Inquiry Life Fellowship, of which we have a monastery here in Montecito, and I have visited with and interviewed on this program Swami Vidyadishananda, and that took me 15 minutes. Don't know how to say correctly. And then I also was able to meet from another branch of the tree, Swami Kriyananda, who he has since passed, was the last remaining living disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And he began a village in Northern California called Ananda Village. It's north of Nevada City, and I've been there. And it's a beautiful place. His shrine is absolutely incredible. They plant tulips every spring, or I guess maybe they plant them Actually, we were there in December, so they were planting them in the winter, and then in the spring when they come up, it's like you've got to make a trip. That's what they tell you. You've got to come back when they're in bloom because it's spectacular colors and it's just fabulous. But I'm always brought back. Is that India obviously, and that aspect obviously is a draw for you. There's something in your past lives or in your DNA or what have you that draws you to India and this place.
Yeah, I think a lot of people when they talk about feeling drawn to India, they speak of past lives, and it just feels like something really much bigger than they are. But regarding Paramahansa Yogananda, who I quote in my novel, begins a section. And self-inquiry, as taught by Ramana Maharshi, the great sage and spiritual teacher who lived at Mount Arunachala, that is really forms the non-dualist strand that appears in my book, because the Guru D, who Jonas falls in love with, like I did, who happened to be an American guy, but he was in the lineage with Ramana Maharshi. So Ramana is his guru, and Ramana's guru is the mountain of Arunachala. So all of those beautiful teachers you mentioned are close to my heart as well, and are in the novel in some subtle ways. Yeah. But certainly in terms of philosophy, in terms of the non-dualist tradition and philosophy.
Well, I will tell you that I have struggled with the whole dualist concept, and I finally was able to bring it to a rest, so to speak, in my own mind. Because I always found it frustrating that the ancient wisdom teachings teach us that we come from the one and we're going back to the one. So why in the Sam Hill are we here in this dualistic world? And I finally was able to make peace with it from this standpoint, that the reality from my perspective, this is just for me, and I always preface it by saying that when I say these things, this is only for me, okay?
Sure.
That there is no dualism. Things just are the way they are. And I use the examples of the macrocosmic world, the universe, out there, as we say, or the microcosmic universe on the subatomic level in here, okay? And we will sit there and we'll go ooh and ah over all of these different things that are happening at both levels. And just go, wow, oh, there's that, cool, oh, that is really, wow, ooh, ah, like when we see fireworks, right? But when it comes to this place where you and I live at this level, there's no ooh and ah, there's ow and oh, And it's like, wait a minute. Well, how is it different from out there or in there to in here to here? How is that different? It's not. Ergo, it just is. And it's epitomized by, and I talk about this all the time, Janis, the Chinese story of the farmer and his son and the neighbor who comes over every day to kind of see how things are going. How was your day? How was your, And he basically tells him, well, my day was good, my day? Well, let's see. Let me tell you what happened today. What happened today was that my son was working with one of the horses and the horse ran off. Neighbor says, oh, that's bad. To which the farmer says, well, who's to say what's good or bad? Next day, how's things going today? Well, my son went off to find the horse And he actually found a whole herd, and now we have like 15 or 20 horses. Well, that's good. To which the farmer says, well, who's to say whether that's good or bad? Now, this story goes on. I won't belabor the point. But that's where I finally came to the realization there is nothing that's either good nor bad. It just is. It just is. And it's our choice as to how we choose to act, not react, but act in accordance with those various events. And I don't believe in coincidence either. I believe in coincidences. Things that coincide, like our paths here today on this program, have coincided. And there are no accidents in that regard. There are wrecks. I've been involved in a couple. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be something there.
Yeah, well, in Jonas in the Mountain, both the Guru D, the Eastern mystic, and Anamika, the Western psychic, would both say that the external is a reflection of the internal. So then it doesn't even, it's not even a matter of making choices of how to respond or react to something, which of course is neither good nor bad in itself. It just is, as my man Van Morrison says in one of my favorite songs. It just is. It just is. Just is.
Yeah.
But the very appearance of it in your life has something to do with you, because whatever you see is there for you. Another way of saying that is that you have expressed that, just as you have expressed the shape of your hands or what clothes you're wearing today. You can see everything that's outside of you as an expression as well. We're back to that interpreting life thing. So so then it's not like there's any distance between what's out there and what's in here. So there's not a matter of using the will to choose how to behave towards something or how to see it as good or bad.
Yeah.
But just the fact that it exists and that you are seeing it, there's a message there for you. It is you.
Yeah.
It is you externalized.
Well, it is something that certainly gives one pause to ponder. And I think that's something that we all need to do from time to time. We need to ponder these things. And a lot of times we encourage people, well, not a lot of times, all the time here on this program. We are constantly encouraging people to go within, to listen to that still small voice. What about you and your, I like to put it this way, your inner life?
That's the sum of my life. That's my life. It's inner. One could, again, if one doesn't see what's out there as having an objective existence or reality, then it what's out there is what's in here. So it's all inner life. There isn't any division between inner and outer, because the outer is a reflection of the inner. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's what a lot of our guests will say, is that very phrasing, if you will. What is as it is above, so it is below, or as it is on the outside, so it is on the inside, and vice versa.
As is within, so without. Yeah.
But unfortunately, we forget that. We forget it a lot, and we need to work to try to remember. We really do.
But
But
that can be a fun and beautiful thing too, getting lost in that. as well for a while, as long as you can sort of bring it back to yourself and go, oh, okay, wow, poof. but of course, I mean, that's what appearances are really all about, for us to engage with and learn about ourselves through and dialogue with. I'm also an expressive arts therapist, or became one later in life. And something that we do is, if I'm working with a client who has something they need to work through, some pain or trauma, we first of all see how it feels and where it exists right now in their body, for example, and then bring it into the arts where it can, so exteriorize it, where it can be engaged with, and you can create a dialogue with it. And from there is this beautiful alchemy that occurs between. So it's kind of a paradox, because on the one hand, yeah, of course, everything true is a paradox when you get down to the bones of it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot. I need clear answers, and I need them now. It's the old I want patience, and I want it now.
Part of the problem is just in the languaging, really, because words are caught up in time, and so when we're talking about this kind of stuff, it's really has nothing to do with time. It's timeless. So when we speak, it's already kind of creating a division, which ends up kind of turning in on itself and becoming a paradox. But yeah, so I just want to say that the appearance is a beautiful, wonderful, juicy thing to partake in. It's not something that necessarily, although there's some traditions that would say otherwise, that we would need all the time to. This is at the crux of my novel again. So there is the non-dualist who would say, yes, don't pay attention to appearance and stay within, and because that's all illusion, Maya.
Yeah.
And then there's the other. The other way, more of a metaphysical approach, which would say, yeah, do it, sure, do it, and know that this is you doing it, and it's something. There are messages there for you. This is for your own learning and growth, and developing into all of yourself and discovering your own knowledge within. Yeah.
It's it is, to me, very extraordinary from that standpoint, that we are in the situations that we find ourselves in, because we are the ones that put it there. It's like I mentioned earlier in the program. Someone said to me today, it's your movie. You wrote the script. You wrote the screenplay. It's all up to you. And I found it so fascinating when I was working for a Christian radio station here in Phoenix, Arizona, where I was born and raised, where if it was something that was bad that happened to you, kind of like Flip Wilson, the devil made me do it. Or if it was good, if it was something fantastic, God gets the credit. Well, wait a minute. So are you a puppet on a string being manipulated by forces you don't understand? Have you ever had to deal with that particular challenge of who's in charge, you or God or the universe? And again, acknowledging that there's only a certain element of our lives that we actually can control. We can kind of agree with that. But what about you and your perspective on that?
Are you talking about control or?
Talking about control, talking about responsibility for one's life, as opposed to, I was born into this world, and as a fact, just by virtue of the fact that I was born into this world, and again, being raised Roman Catholic, I was born with original sin. I didn't do anything wrong. Okay? I didn't touch the hot stove. I didn't knock over Mama's expensive vase or spill the milk or cut the dog's tail or whatever. I was just born, and now I'm a sinner. And it's like you entered a room. She's guilty. Your Honor, because she walked in the room, she's guilty. It makes no sense to me. So what about that in terms of
Right.
your philosophy and personal responsibility for your life and who you are and where you are and why you are?
Hmm. I was just thinking of the whole original sin thing, and that has to do with being embodied, the body being so the whole, the beautiful, the sacred self being embodied into the flesh. Yeah, that has nothing to do with what I'm thinking about, or try to answer your question is just very briefly. I'm responsible for everything in my life. Yeah. I've always felt that that in some way I was creating my reality
Mm-hmm.
in every imaginable way, even yeah, even
Yeah.
when it came to again what I was seeing around. So I take ultimately ultimate responsibility for sure. There is yeah, and that is like in the Better This Way song. There is okay, so it looks like there's bad stuff happening to you, but um, nobody out there can fix that. If there is indeed even anyone out there, um, it's it's just
Interesting.
you.
Uh-huh.
It's just you, and that's another thing as well. That Anamika in my novel, one could call her a metaphysical solipsist, really, in terms of philosophy, because she ends up saying, well, there's nothing out there. It's just you. It's just you. Everything is just you. So, and I'm aligned with that as well. One, I guess I could say, yeah.
What about death? I had Bernie Siegel on this
Hmm.
program, and he shared with us about the death of his wife a year or so ago, a few years back. And we chatted along for a while, and then I came back with, "Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I really haven't experienced this, that, or the other thing as far as the transitioning. I used the word transitioning, and he got all over my case about it. He says, "What do you mean transit? What's the matter? Why can't you use the word death? That's what happens when people die. They die. They don't transition." And I got his point.
Hmm.
I really got his point. Because I was using transitioning because death and dying have such negative connotations energetically. And so I
Oh.
thought I'd use something else. And he says, no, 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 they died. And I said, okay, all right,
Yeah.
I get you,
Yeah.
Bernie. And you know what? It's absolutely a valid point. So
I'm
what are
with
your,
Bernie there.
what's that?
Yeah, I'm with Bernie there.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's whole, there's so many euphemisms for death, like passing away,
Yeah.
passing. Yeah, I am in love with death. I I love death. I've written pieces about death, and that have been published in various places, literary journals, about how it's death that's really the meaning of life. um,
Hmm. I like that.
yeah.
I like that.
Mm.
Death is the meaning of life.
Yeah, it's to really know death. It's not to know life. It's to know death, and death. Like when you think of death, like what comes up? Is it even possible? I think the closer we are, and this is what I mean when I say that I love death, um, is that death is the bigger picture. It is what we are all leaning into, what we all really are wanting to know. Um, and if we get a whiff of it, and we often do when someone close to us dies, and for many there's a long grieving process, and all of the other stuff that comes up, which has this tendency to put one right sort of on the edge, when you're going through something.
Hmm.
So death is a teacher in so many ways, and I don't mean that it's a teacher because it shows us our life is limited, so we should appreciate what we got. No, I mean that just the presence of death in our lives is what is not only what makes us alive,
Mm-hmm.
Death gives us life, because without death there is no impermanence, and that's what life is. It's the fleeting transitoriness, the transience, and that beauty there. But that the presence of death, in that it is the unknowable, the great unknown, that if we can sit with that and be in that, then that has the ability to open us right up into, one could say that enlightenment is a falling into death, or falling into the love of death, or understanding death. I could go on and on about death, Richard.
Well, I will tell you, it is a subject, this sounds kind of strange, but it's a subject that's near and dear to my heart, because, number one, if it's my time, I'm ready. Do I want to live another 40 years? I'm 61, and I feel like I want to outlive my great-grandmother, who lived to be 100. I'd love to live beyond that and continue doing what it is that I'm doing. But at the same time, if tomorrow's my day to go, I'm ready. And every time I hear of someone close to me or a famous person who dies, I wonder, the first thought that usually goes through my mind is, I wonder what they're experiencing, what's happening. Now, I will tell you that I have an idea, because I went through a program, a session, a conscious hypnosis session called Life Between Lives.
Yeah.
You're familiar.
I'm familiar.
It was extraordinary. I have to tell you that I would love going back to my last, just the one before this one, lifetime. Not only because of the life that I was living then, but because of the way I left. I mean, I went up to my mountain cabin up in the snow. I come out of the cabin one day. I sit down in the chair. Now, why the twang comes into my voice when I tell the rest of this, I don't know. I sit down in the chair there, and I tilt my hat back, put my feet up on the rail, and I say, man, it's been a good life. And I leave, or die, Bernie, to you. And I die. And it was that simple, and it was that easy. And and then, of course, that Life Between Lives experience, what's going on after that life and before this one, was astounding. I when I read 2 or 3 of Dr. Newton's books about the case studies, and then
me too,
I got to meet with a local practitioner here in Santa Barbara, who has been on this program a number of times, Peter Wright, and it just, to me, it was fascinating. It's just absolutely intriguing. And again, when I went through the session, there was never any leading question. It was always, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling, tasting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What are you experiencing? Never, are you experiencing this or that, or do you see this or that or that? No. And, he was very clear about that. He says, no, you're going to be consciously aware of everything you're going through, and I will facilitate, but I'm not going to guide you beyond the questions that I will ask you. So it was really, really a fascinating. And if I made it up, so what? I've been even asked the question, Janis, if there's anything after this life. And I have to tell them that I believe that there is, because to believe otherwise is illogical, because to me, it doesn't make any sense that we're here and we're having all of these experiences and we're trying to learn and grow and raise our consciousness, and then the lights are out. However, if it is just lights out, we're never going to know. Okay? So, I mean, seriously, right?
Oh, and then you throw in the simultaneity of time, and hence the simultaneity of incarnations in various lives.
Oh.
And then you have a whole other thing. So it ceases to become I would go so far as to say that I don't even believe, but I know. And I will say that.
Okay.
I'm just going to say that. But for me, it's also not so much of an after, because I do believe that that it's only this character here that, again, with our languaging and the bodies that have something to a relationship with time and space, and that in reality that really doesn't exist. So in a sense, I have a kind of relationship that exists now with what you could call other lives. Mm-hmm. And I also see them, and so does Anamika, coincidentally, in my book, as also as metaphorically aspects of your personality. You know, you've got different aspects of your personality. Some might lie latent. Some might be developed later in life. Mm-hmm. Some you might get really into, like you started songwriting. That's great. So you have the songwriting person. So on another level, in a level that is outside of time, there are these personalities that you can look at yourself as a microcosm of these personalities, or you could see your greater self as composed of these personalities or these outshoots. So say when you're learning to you're starting to write songs, Richard, which is so cool, there is another aspect of you. So first of all, you as Richard mm-hmm. in your personality, but also in another dimension. And the quantum physics will sort of fall into this too, but another dimension, in another time, in another place, there is a songwriter.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. So
I love how you've made it sound so simple. It's so simple. It's so simple. No, and see, that's the beauty of it all, is that sometimes we think as humans that we know, and we don't. We have a little glimpse. We have a little glimpse of the big picture, but there's always more to see, and there's always more to experience, and that's the fun of this life, I have to tell you. And it's only in the last year or two that I've really gotten to grasp that aspect of it, to where I'm not getting drawn into the reaction. As I mentioned earlier, we need to learn how to act in accordance with whatever's going on around us, as opposed to react based upon past programming, if you will. And I'm finding that I'm doing that. I'm being more of the observer as well as the participant, and also realizing that, you know, and here's one of the biggest things for me. I know that whatever the situation is, no matter how long it has gone on, and of course time is only in the mind of the human, it's all temporary. It's all temporary. There is nothing other than the energy that enlivens everything that is permanent, everything that we know of in this mortal realm. It's all temporary, you know. And yes, the sun will burn out one day in a couple of billion years or so, but that's according to man's time. The sun is already burned out and then reignited as another star. And this cycle just goes, and it's everything's in motion. Everything's in change. Everything's changing. And it's really cool.
Or everything in the appearance world is changing. In what some might say, the illusory world, the world of Maya.
Yes.
The world of change.
Yeah.
Yes, whereas in the capital R reality, from a non-dualist perspective, there isn't change. There's just the one bliss isn't even the right word, but
yeah, I know words sometimes just. Yeah. There aren't words to describe what you're wanting to describe sometimes. It's just not possible. However, there are a couple, and they are Janis Harper. Janis Harper, the name, she's the woman that has been with us here on the program. She has written a fictional book. It's a metaphysical love story called Jonas and the Mountain, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I'm so glad that you have stayed with us here throughout the program. You know, Janis, so we're going to wrap the program up. We're going to end our program with the final piece that we have here called Remembrance Day. So, first of all, give us a real quick synopsis synopsis of the song Remembrance Day from your current album of songs that are sort of a compilation of, it sounds like, of your life of sorts, at least at this point, to this point.
Well, it's a retrospective of my life as a performing singer-songwriter. So I've selected songs from all sorts of parts of my life in terms of the writing of the songs.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was a song. Actually, I was traveling in the States again several decades ago at quite a young age, and I met in San Diego. I met a Vietnam vet, and I learned about something called Vietnam syndrome. And I saw his life, and he took me to how he was living his life and the kind of the pain that he was constantly in. And he took me to a place where there are other vets who were experiencing what was called Vietnam syndrome, which I think is, of course, a form of PTSD. So I was moved by that, and this song came out of that. It first of all was called the Vietnam Syndrome, and then I changed it to Remembrance Day. And I think it's applicable to all kinds of war, but more than that, to those who it remembers not those who died, but those who returned damaged, returned with. It's about PTSD, really. Yeah, and this is an old song, but you've chosen the 3 songs on this program that I have music videos for, actually,
yes,
that are on YouTube. Yeah.
And I did that intentionally so that as these songs play on the YouTube channel, people can watch the video. We're going to embed it into the program for our viewers. And I hope that's okay. Cool? I hope that's okay with you.
Yeah, it
excellent,
is.
Excellent.
Yeah, but I just want to say the rest of my songs are available on on Spotify, and wherever iTunes, blah blah, anywhere online. Okay.
And it's Janis Harper. Janis Harper. And I have 3 final questions for, don't you dare go away. I have 3 final questions for you that I ask all of my guests. And I'm going to ask those questions really quickly here. But I want to remind our listeners that you are listening to Tell Me Your Story here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We are also podcasting on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, where you'll also find Janis Harper's music. We're also on Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry. We're also on, iHeartRadio, as well as Amazon Music. And, of course, as I mentioned, YouTube, where you will be able to listen to, as well as see, the music video, the 3 songs that we featured in today's program. So, with that, we also encourage you to support this work if you can do so financially. We would greatly appreciate it. Any amount is gratefully helpful and accepted and used to keep this program moving forward. PayPal is our middleman, and we're grateful for PayPal. And when you go there to send us a contribution, all you have to do is put in my email address to send, and it's richard@richarddugan.com. Very, very easy to do, richard@richarddugan.com. And please participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision. That's right, the Decade of Perfect Vision. We ask you to spend time during this 2020s, what's left of it anyway. We've got, 8 years or so, to go within, to spend that time listening to that still small voice and being in that quiet, peaceful, calm place, okay? All right, so now we go to those 3 final questions. And every time I get to this part of the program, I feel like I'm on a game show. I feel like I'm Alex Trebek on Jeopardy! And you have to answer these in the form of a question. Now, you can answer them in any way you feel free to do so. The first of the 3 questions: who is Janis Harper?
What? You tell me. That's my answer.
Okay, all right.
I just assuming, because it's a Jeopardy-like thing, that the answers have to be brief.
No, they do not.
Oh, okay. What? So you want like?
You can answer it in whatever way that you are led to answer the question. I never prompt the guest as far as that's concerned, other than with the question, which is, of course, who is Janis Harper?
Right. Well, because we've been speaking metaphysically and spiritually, and there's so many ways to answer that. But in terms of maybe stuff about my life that listeners might be interested in, I taught, I'm a former adjunct English professor. I taught for about 20 years at college and university here in BC. And then in later midlife, discovered expressive arts therapy as something that really aligned with my own metaphysics and spirituality, and became that. And I've always been a writer, and I've always been a performing singer-songwriter and an actor, a stage actor primarily. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's a funny question to end the show with, Richard. I mean, if you've been listening to the show, you probably, that's what I mean. Like, you tell me.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I don't know what level you're asking me on.
Well, that's where your intuition comes in. Okay? But be that as it may. The second question is, what is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
This sort of world peace, Richard. I'm sorry. What is it that I hope to achieve through the work I'm doing now? I would like, I have a Dear Reader paragraph that I posted on my Amazon page, which is what I hope the reader will get from Jonas. And really, it's what I hope to achieve, I guess. And that is to help to somehow, I don't even like to use the word help, but inspire others to find their own innate knowledge and vitality and ability to transform and heal themselves. I think that each one of us has everything we need, and that we have vast knowledge reservoirs, that, and if I could do something and do it in everything that I am and do in my life, it's to show people how they can get there, know themselves better. And I don't mean just know who they are, like, I mean, access whatever you need to feel fulfilled and happy and whole and healthy and whatever. Yeah.
And finally, this probably falls under the same category as we've been dealing with these last two questions. What is your life's purpose?
Oh, well, I just told you, Richard.
Very good. Well, I asked the questions just the same.
Yeah. No, I think it's. Let me see if I can say it any better. It's to help people access their own innate stores of immense creativity and vitality and knowledge. Whatever you got, whatever you need within you, and how you can access that. There's some simple ways. Yeah.
I hear you.
And we've talked about some of them. Yeah.
Well, Janis Harper, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I encourage people to go to janisharper.ca to find out more about you, the work that you're doing, as well as the other works that you have produced, including the latest novel, Jonas, and The Mountain, a Metaphysical Love Story. You'll also find on her website Body Breakdowns. We want you to learn about the tales of illness and recovery, and then also another book in Thai, which I think would be a lot of fun for folks to read, Emails from India, Women Write Home. And we encourage you to find out more, as well as you'll be able to listen to some of her music, not only on Spotify, but she even has a little player with her latest album releases on her website, which is, again, janisharper.ca. And Janis, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lull.
Johnny came marching home 10 years ago today. We thank the Lord that he was home, but Johnny just looked away. Now he doesn't talk at all, says he's nothing more to say, but he signed his name to sacrifice and gave it all away. When Johnny was in school, the teachers all they said, this boy will go right to the top, there's a lot inside his head. Now he doesn't work at all, says he doesn't need the bread. He'd rather take it from the ones who filled his friend with lead. Oh Johnny, where have you gone? Why aren't you here anymore? None of us know where you've been, just that people call it war. How can you find your home when you've been in hell and returned? In your sleep I heard you say, Lord, how many more have they burned? Some say Johnny can't handle life, some say he's a little bent. But when he said, do you know death, no one knew what he meant. They say, come on, it's easy for him, the government's got them all set. But society says it has no room for the Vietnam vet. Oh Johnny, where have you gone? Why aren't you here anymore? None of us know where you've been, just that people call it war. Now you have no home, 'cause you've been in hell and returned. In your sleep I heard you say, Lord, how many more have they burned? Johnny came crawling home 10 years ago today. None of us could understand the price he had to pay. Now he wants to kill himself before he fades away. We don't know the reason, we just look another way.